I understand that you had a good team and you have some success stories there. So share with me some good story about your automation program. Yeah.
Sure. For the first 5 years of me being a tester at Newbridge, which was the company that ended up being bought by Alcatel and then merging with Lucent. When I worked at Newbridge for 5 years, I was an automation tester, and then I became an automation test manager, and I was an automation test manager for probably 3 years before I moved over to the DSL team. When I was there, we had a really good automation environment. In the year 2000, Ross Collard came in. He saw the automation environment. Ross has worked with hundreds of companies, and he told me, he said, this is probably the best automation environment I've seen. So we could handle very easily changes from one release to another without rewriting our test cases. We had varianting built in. It was a very, very well thought out system. And we had a fantastic logging program with a log viewer that was very easy to filter on. We had excellent debugging. As you were executing it, you could pause the script at any point. It was written in TCL, so Tickle.
Right. Yeah.
And
love that stuff, by the way.
I love Tickle too. It's a fantastic language, and the whole environment was awesome. I moved to the DSL team, which had been a former Alcatel. Newbridge had a DSL product as well, so we had a team in Canada, where I worked just outside of Ottawa, and I moved to the DSL team. And the automation environment that they had was a lot more cumbersome. It was written still in Tickle for the actual test cases, but the suite part, the list of test cases being executed, was written in K-shell. That was inefficient because the K-shell would call a Tickle shell, which would then load all the libraries, execute that script, whether it took 30 seconds or 5 minutes, kill that Tickle shell, go back to the K-shell, which would then spawn another Tickle shell, load all the libraries. Each loading of the libraries and spawning took 30 seconds.
Right, so that's
our daily automation was taking about 47 hours on one system.
Problem. Yeah.
So daily, taking 47 hours, they solved it by splitting it over 3 systems to get parallel. So that was a bit of an issue. Plus, the logging was very cumbersome on that particular product. And to the point that they had to pretty much, to get it down to 47 hours, they had to turn off all logging. So we were getting almost no logging. It was still logging pass and fails, but if you wanted to look back to see what had happened up to that point, it was the log didn't tell you much. And it also didn't have the ability to pause the script at any point to see what was going on. So there was very limited debugging. So my success story here was I had the APE environment from Newbridge, the automated programming environment, and what we did was I had a gentleman from Belgium who was in charge of our tools. He was visiting, and I said, I've spoken with different people here, and we think we can take APE and wrap it around your environment.
Right.
We think it'll take about 2 person-months effort.
Right.
To be able to do that. My anticipation is a 25% reduction in execution time. We'll get full logging, and we'll be able to debug. We'll be able to pause the script. And he said, well, that's a no-brainer. He went back to Belgium. A couple of weeks went by, I didn't hear from him. I phoned him up, and he said, I talked to the manager here and in charge of the automation environment, and he said it would be 9 person-years of effort, not 2 person-months, so we can't do that. We can't afford that. So I said, okay. I hung up on him. My boss had just gone on vacation, so I told my team, I said, I have 2 weeks before my boss is back, and I need this working. Can we do that? It doesn't have to be complete, but I need it working. The proof of concept needs to be done in 2 weeks. So two of my team and I worked on it, mostly the team. At the end of the 2 weeks, we got it working. It gave us a 50% reduction in execution time. It gave us full logging and full debugging.
With logging on.
Well, full logging. Which with full logging on the other system, it was running in over 80 hours, and we had the ability to debug. So that was really good. I phoned up the gentleman in Belgium again, and I said, "Hey Rick, I have this." I went ahead and did it anyway, and before he even heard anything, he said, "Oh, I wish you hadn't done that. My mandate is to consolidate tools amongst the different sites globally, and now you're introducing a new one." I said, okay, but we have a 50% reduction in execution time. We have full logging now instead of no logging, and we have debugging. He said, I'll call you tomorrow. He called me the next day, and he said, you have a new job. You're rolling out that system worldwide. So that was my job for a year and a half. I then rolled out APE worldwide. I got to go to Shanghai and to Bangalore and Antwerp to train them on the system because I knew it from before. So that worked out really well, and that system is still being used. We ended up completely rewriting the original scripts that we wrapped around.
Right.
We threw all that out and replaced it. The way that that 47 hours of scripts worked was very much like a long train. Everybody added their own car to the end of the train.
Right.
Nobody ever cleaned up after themselves.
Right.
So a car would get added, it would work on its own, but when it got added to the train, it didn't work because they didn't know what was happening.
Right.
So in the 47 hours of execution, I believe we reset the database, like erased it and reconfigured the node 5 times.
Right.
Because that was how they fixed it. So
right.
each time you reset the node and reconfigured, it was taking like half an hour total end to end. So there was a lot of stuff like that they cleaned up. Plus, everybody would write their own automation, just chuck it on the end when they could reuse a piece of code here and just put their test in the middle because it was already configured.
Right.
So what we did was we rewrote everything. We got a very holistic view.
Right.
And I wasn't in charge of this part. It was someone in Antwerp, but I was helping with the overall concept. And we had a table-driven design, so you could write your test cases in a table. The configuration was done in multiple tables, and so we ended up with substantially more coverage than the original 47-hour test, and it was executing in 4 hours.